You can take the blue pill, wake up and believe whatever you want. You can take the red pill, stay in Wonderland, and find out just how deep the rabbit hole goes. But remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Neo, of course, takes the red pill. And he finds out shortly thereafter that his entire life he's been living in a computer simulation. And that he's the one charged with saving all of humanity. He learns that he can learn Kung Fu in about 10 minutes, and later that he can fly. Studying philosophical ethics isn't going to reveal anything this disturbing. However, it can be unnerving. It can be a little bit scary. And it can be unnerving and a little bit scary because you're going to learn things that most people suppress. You're going to find that issues that you've thought are fully settled really aren't. And you're going to find that views that you thought were fully defendable really aren't. And since most people conflate their opinions with their ego, you may perceive these threats to your opinions as threats to you. Studying philosophical ethics and philosophy generally, therefore, requires courage. Now, it doesn't require firefighter courage. It's not the case that you're going to have to run into a burning building or be expected to do anything that scary. However, it does require some courage. And so I want to warn here at the outset that it can be discomforting, so buckle up. And if you stick with this and you pursue it further, kudos on having the guts. Most people don't. Ethics in a Nutshell, the book itself in a nutshell. I first wrote this for my students at the University of Tennessee, and back then it was only a 12-page PDF. I was teaching contemporary moral issues and business ethics, social and political philosophy, professional responsibility, bioethics, first as a graduate teaching associate, and then also as a full-time lecturer, briefly. And then I expanded that short document into something more robust for the Ethics Bowl community. It was an open source ebook. And then I expanded that into a commercial book with YouTube videos just like this one for all of the chapters, and as a book that could be read by any person with an interest in philosophical ethics, but also that could be used in the college and even the high school classroom for really bright students. What it covers is everything that you would expect to learn in a good college ethics class, including what academic philosophy even is. Academic philosophy is the reason-based attempt to answer life's big, non-empirical questions. Philosophers attempt to answer questions such as, what's the ultimate nature of the universe? This is metaphysics. What are the foundational rules of reasoning? This is logic. What does it mean to know something, really? That's epistemology. And what does it mean to be a good person, to behave morally? What's the right thing to do? This is ethics. Philosophers answer these difficult, non-empirical questions without the luxury of physical evidence or instruments to directly test with by authoring, evaluating, revising, and improving in a collective, cooperative effort arguments. An argument in the philosophical sense does not refer to a quarrel between two people. In fact, arguments can be authored by a single person, and in most cases they are, although philosophers, the good ones, build on the arguments of others. An argument in this technical sense means a series of claims called premises intended to logically support another claim called the conclusion. A conclusion in this technical sense does not refer to the end of a story. In fact, the conclusion could be at the very beginning of the argument, and the conclusion is simply the claim that the rest of the argument is supposed to logically support. For example, Buddy barks, all dogs bark, and Buddy's a dog. Here's that argument written out a little bit more formally. You can see the conclusion is right here at the very top. Buddy barks, it was the first thing that I said. And then all dogs bark was a premise, and so too was Buddy's a dog. And these are intended together to logically support this conclusion that Buddy barks. Now notice that one of those premises, all dogs bark, is false. Some dog breeds aren't known for barking. Some dogs have had injuries to their voice boxes, and some dogs are just stupid. So this particular argument isn't the best argument because this premise is just false. However, it's the case that Buddy actually barks, and he barks more than he should, usually at hours that he shouldn't bark. So you want to separate your analysis of the premises supporting the conclusion from whether or not the conclusion is actually true. You can have a terrible argument with a true conclusion, and you can have a perfect argument, well, not perfect, but what seems to be a very good argument with a false conclusion. You could anyway. If you'd like to learn more about how to evaluate arguments and how to author good arguments of your own, I'm going to put a link to a Fundamentals of Critical Thinking video that I made that I think will really help. So this is what philosophy is. I've talked about what ethics in a nutshell contains. It contains quite a bit more than what I've previewed. It contains the four dominant ethical theories of Kantianism, utilitarianism/consequentialism, virtue ethics, and feminist care ethics. It contains arguments as to why philosophers reject moral subjectivism, or the view that ethics is a mere matter of personal opinion. Philosophers do not believe that, and you're going to find out why. It contains an all things considered approach to ethics that allows you to balance conflicting guidance from the four dominant ethical theories. It explains the role of our moral intuitions and coherence. Lots of cool stuff. But I've explained that, and I've also explained how philosophers use arguments to answer those questions. But what are philosophers like? Well, they're very much like Spock. Spock from Star Trek, the guy with the pointy ears and the green blood and the really good hair. Spock is exceptionally intelligent, and he's also exceptionally brave, but he is not arrogant. Spock is very much willing to change his mind if given good enough reason to do so. He's not a jerk about his intelligence. Spock is always open to and seeking out, in most cases, better information because he wants to align himself with whatever makes the most sense. The best philosophers embody these same characteristics. They have views, but at the same time, they understand that they very much could be incorrect. They've been wrong in the past. Their reasoning capacities are imperfect, and so therefore their commitment to the truth and their interest in believing what's true gives them good reason to be humble in their views and to consider new information. Spock was the same way. I invite you to be the same way. This doesn't mean that all philosophers are this way. Philosophers, of course, are human beings. Spock had the benefit of being half Vulcan. Humans have this tendency of aligning their egos with their opinions. Don't do that. Align yourself with what makes the most sense, and you're going to do a better job in philosophy and have a lot more fun. So that's the ideal philosopher. It'd be Spock. It's the case that philosophers have to be very brave. Well, maybe not very brave, not firefighter brave, but brave. You're going to be able to do that. But I want to warn here at the outset again that it is going to be scary, and it's, or in some cases, depending on how comfortable you are with this sort of thing, it can be discomforting. I want you to know, though, that I don't offer philosophical ethics as a replacement for whatever methodology you currently use to answer moral questions. We're going to talk about the compatibility of philosophical ethics and religious moral reasoning in chapter number 2. As you examine these tools, this philosopher's approach, you decide which of these tools, which of these components are worth your endorsement, which of these are worth incorporating into your decision making. Some of them you'll decide won't be, and that's completely fine. Those that are, go ahead and incorporate them. Let common sense and reason be your guides. But one of the side effects of this stuff is going to be that you're going to lose some certainty. You've been certain about particular views that you have. You're going to find out that maybe they're not as defensible as you once thought. I would argue that that's a good thing because what you lose in certainty, you're going to gain in wisdom. Socrates, the great-grandfather of the Western academic philosophical tradition, was said to be the wisest man in all of Athens, Greece, not because he knew so much, but because he knew so little. I'm Professor Matt, and welcome to Ethics in a Nutshell.